All right. At this time, the mayor will call to order the meeting of City Council, the regular City Council meeting for 6 p.m. on Tuesday, August the 9th, 2022. City Council Chambers, 201 East Nash Street, Terrell, Texas. We have in chambers with us District 2, Grady Simpson, and District 4, Stephanie Holmes Thomas, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem. We all know, District 5 is vacant. And then I received a call from District 3, Mayor Ronnie Velasquez, Mayor Pro Tem. She isn't feeling well and will not be here. She is excused from the meeting. At this time, if we would please stand, and would you give invocation, Grady, and remain standing for the pledges?
Bow our heads, please. Father God, we give you thanks for this day. We thank you for keeping us throughout the week and up to this point in our lives. We ask for your guidance and your wisdom. Give the council the understanding and the insight that we need to bring justice and fairness throughout the city. Help us to execute good governance to our citizens. Help our citizens to have the desire to understand. And we'll come and work with our city and with our council to make the city of Terrell a great place to live. All in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. All right. Our next item on the agenda is mayor, council, community recognitions, and events. I do want to say that I attended this morning a joint effort by our Terrell Police Department, the Terrell Fire Department, and the TISD School District Police. And they were doing some training for active shooter. Very impressed with how that went this morning. I want to thank those guys. They're going to be the first responders, and man, are they dedicated to their work, and we thank them for that. Additionally, there are some in this community who think that this council is lacking as it pertains to representation. I've heard the concern that District 5 has not been represented. I can report that District 5 is not only being represented, but it's well represented. We've got guys out there, and I thank y'all for being here today, right? And I'm sure that our committee that's going to look at who District 5 replacement will be, it'll be a close and tough decision for those, but we do have a committee. We're going to cut off on the 15th for applications, and then we'll move forward with our process. But thank y'all for being here and showing interest in the city of Terrell. Does anybody have any comments or recognitions? Hearing none, we'll move on. Next item on the agenda is to hear remarks from visitors. And we do have one, Patty Yoakum. If you would, please come forward. Introduce yourself at the mic, your address, and then you can speak.
Good evening. My name is Patty Yoakum. I live at 103 Main Street here in Terrell. I'm here with 3 hats. My first hat is a citizen. I live on Main Street, and I love all the overlays y'all are doing, and I'd really appreciate some attention on Main Street, Lawrence, Johnson. Those streets are really bad. They're main thoroughfares from 9th Street over to Pacific. So I'd really appreciate that, putting that on the list. Another thing about Main Street is at the corner of 3rd and Main is where the church is. I live right next door to the church. And by the time people come off 9th and hit that 3rd Street coming over the hill, they're going 40, 55 miles an hour. And every house from the church to 1st Street has small children in it. And I would like for y'all to consider putting a stop sign on Main Street. There's already one on 3rd, but they have a thoroughfare on Main. So if you could put a stop sign there on the Main Street where it's a 4-way stop there for church traffic and for the children, that would be awesome. That's my citizen hat. Also, I'm here as a representative for the president of the Oakland Memorial Board, Cemetery Board, better known as Oakland Cemetery on Moore Street. I sent an email to the engineering department July 29th asking them if we could borrow a traffic counter so that we can judge and see what our traffic is in the cemetery for future data that we are needing to do. I have not heard from them, so I would appreciate a response. Third hat, I'm here as a member of the Kiwanis Club, new member, and I have recently taken over the sign, our Kiwanis sign that's on Moore Street from Pastor Pete. And I'm here to offer my services to you, that if you have events that you want to have advertised on that sign, or any, a thing that's coming up, that you have my contact information, and feel free to call me or email me with those events, and just give me some time to, don't call me the day before you want it posted, but we'll be glad to offer any services that we can with that sign. It's right there on Moore, it's got great visibility. Okay?
Thank you for your
Thank
comments.
you.
You bet. Our next item on the agenda, council, is to discuss and consider minutes from the regular city council meeting on August the 2nd of 2022. Is there a motion on item 6.1?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for the regular city council meeting, August 2nd, 2022.
We have a motion from Grady Simpson, District 2. Is there a second? Have a second from Stephanie Holmes Thomas, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem, District 4. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with unanimous consent of those present. Our next item on the agenda would be discuss and consider appointment and reappointment to the Planning and Zoning Commission. This is Dawn Stiles, City Secretary.
Mayor and council, in your packet is a roster for the Planning and Zoning Commission. Rosie Juarez, her term had expired. She did not wish to be reappointed. Her letter is in the packet also, and there are several applications for her spot. And I also have Garrett Carlisle. He's a member on the P&Z board. His term expired on June 2022, and there is an email in here saying that he would like to be reappointed.
Okay, so,
This falls under Mayrani Velasquez.
yeah, I talked with Mayor Pro Tem earlier, and she would like to, for the council to consider. So I'll make a motion that she would like to appoint Ms. Kelly to represent District 3 on the P&Z, and the current applicants, the other current applicants will be considered at a different time, but the ones who have submitted for reappointment, and those were, again, Garrett Carlisle and George Vargas, or not George?
Jorge, his term is actually not up till November.
Okay.
Vote on him in
We'll bring that back to a later meeting.
But did he, so she would like to appoint Deborah Kelly, reappoint Garrett Carlisle, and reappoint George Vargas, but those are only two that we can act
Those would be the
on?
only two.
Okay.
Ms. Kelly and Mr.
Carlisle. Okay, so the motion that I would like to make on her behalf is to appoint Deborah Kelly and reappoint Garrett Carlisle to the Planning and Zoning Commission. That is the motion. Is there a second? I have a second from Grady Simpson, District 2. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
I abstain just because Mayrani, this is her area. I wouldn't mind postponing to another week, but I'm just gonna abstain.
Okay, well, again, so she contacted me and asked me to do this for her. You still want to abstain?
Still like to abstain.
So we can't do that. We can't pass, so you want to not,
We just have to postpone it, Mayor.
well, let's talk through it. So I have a text from Mayrani, who's, and I understand the councilwoman's concerns, but she contacted me and asked me to do this for her. Are you telling me that you want me to tell her that you did not want to support that?
You can tell her that I said because it's her area.
No, no, I
if
know, but
we
here's,
could
you want to read
postpone it.
you want to read her text?
No, I don't
So that
have
you
to.
understand?
No,
I
sir.
wouldn't do it on my own. You do understand
I
that?
believe that, but it's just to me more practical to just wait. We're gonna have another meeting next week, I'm sure, and we can do that. I wanna sympathize or empathize with her being sick, I don't think it's anything that pressing that we have to do it today, just out of respect for her and her being over that board.
Again, she called and asked for us to take action on it, and that's the only reason why I made the motion. But if that's your wish, then that's what we'll do. So you're gonna abstain, and then therefore it dies? Is that right, Greg?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that dies. Our next item on the agenda is to discuss and consider, airport board reappointment. Don?
Mayor and council, in your packet is the airport board roster. Brian Thayer, his term expired June 2022. Andrew Jones' term expires in September of 2022. And there are emails in the packet saying that they would both like to be reappointed, and this falls under Mayor Rick Carmona's.
So I'm gonna make a motion that we reappoint those who have asked to be reappointed to the airport board. That's my motion. Is there a second?
A second.
I have a second from Stephanie Holmes Thomas, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with unanimous consent of those present. Next item on the agenda is 8.1. Greg, would you handle that, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we bring to you tonight ordinance number 2916, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Texas, approving a negotiated settlement between the Atmos City Steering Committee, ACSC, and Atmos Energy Corporation, Mid-Tex Division, regarding the company's 2022 rate review mechanism filing. Declaring existing rules to be unreasonable, adopting tariffs that reflect rate adjustments consistent with the negotiated settlement, finding the rates to be set by the attached settlement tariffs to be just and reasonable and in the public interest, approving an attachment establishing a benchmark for pensions and retiree medical benefits, requiring the company to reimburse ACSC's reasonable rate-making expenses, determining that this ordinance was passed in accordance with the requirements of the Texas Open Meetings Act, adopting a savings clause, declaring an effective date, and requiring delivery of this ordinance to the company and the ACSC's legal counsel.
Okay. This is a discussion item. This will be handled through Don. Go ahead.
Yes, Mayor and council, ordinance number 2916 adopts the rate review mechanism, or RRM, rate tariffs, and finds the adoption of the new natural gas rates to be just, reasonable, and in the public interest. Given Atmos Mid-Texas' claim that its historic cost of services should entitle it to recover $141.3 million in additional system-wide revenues, the RRM settlement at $115 million for ACSC cities reflects substantial savings to ACSC cities. The impact of the settlement on average residential rates is an increase of $4.60 on a monthly basis, or 6.7%. The increase for average commercial usage will be $14.34, or 4.3%. The Atmos City Steering Committee Executive Committee, consisting of city employees of 18 ACSC members, urges all ACSC members to pass the ordinance before September 30th, 2022. New rates become effective on October 1st, 2022.
Does anybody have any questions on this ordinance? Okay, thank you, Don. Next item on the agenda is discuss change order number 1 for North Blanche Water Main Project, and this is going to be McKeska.
Sir, so this item bringing to you is basically due to a conflict. Number one, that we found in the field during construction, and the other is actually an omission in the specs. Item number one, for a 12-inch water lowering, the plans and specs include a 12-inch line that goes across North Blanche, just north of East Moore, from east to west. And when they were digging across there to install it, there's actually two storm sewer pipes that belong to TxDOT that were running, and were actually in conflict with the water main, that we didn't know they were there. So they were omitted on the plans just because they were unknown. And so what that created was some decision-making on what we're gonna do. You have to lower the water line. We have to extend the length of the water line a little bit in order to install a fire hydrant to get away from them for the elevation purposes and stuff. So we're gonna have to extend the line a little bit to the east of those storm sewers. We went back and forth on that item with XIT, with the contractor. And this change order between that and some fire hydrants, a couple of fire hydrants were just missed from the bid items. If you look on page 49, you'll see that Friesen Nichols has reviewed this. We've all looked over it and reviewed the cost. It totals $27,452.54, which is above the $302,507 initial contract price. I'll tell you, the contractor first came in and asked for $53,000, and we said no. So we went back and forth about 3 or 4 times trying to understand their request and get them to understand our concerns and try to tell them to justify a little more, and basically they agreed they could reduce the cost. So this will be our recommendation, is to approve this, and I'll answer any questions you may have.
No, you know what? While we'd never like to deal with change orders, it's just part of the process. I've been involved with a lot of these different companies over the years. Friesen Nichols is a good group. If their recommendation and your recommendation is that we move forward on the $27,452.54 number, while it's not what we would like to do, it's what we have, right? And it's obviously better than the $53,000, so thank you for negotiating that down. Does anybody have any comments on this item? Again, this is just a discussion item, we're not active.
Yes.
Do you have any?
Thank you for working
discussion?
for us, working with that contractor to get the price down a little bit. We can use that
20-something
somewhere
thousand,
else.
yes.
27 somewhere.
Yes, this will increase the total contract amount, but it'll be, the revised will be a not to exceed $329,959.54, once you add this change order number 1, assuming that's approved.
Well, you know, you'll see us upset a lot of times, but Stephanie's correct here. When you save us money, it's hard to be upset with the staff, right? So thank you for that work again. Thank you for the comments, council. Our next item
Thank you.
on the agenda is 8.3, but we're going to pass on this due to action that was taken on Friday. We're going to move on to 8.4 and discuss resolution authorizing updates to the employee handbook. This is Mr. Sims.
So, Mayor and Council, I'm going to walk through the discussion that we had on what we were referring to as the Live, Work, Balance package. We talked about this on Thursday at the budget workshop, and I just wanted to kind of recap where we stand with this. So the effort here is that we know salary means a lot to folks, and we also know that things that are balancing everybody's day-to-day life with the amount of effort they put into work also matters very much to folks. So as we were looking at the issue of not quite being able to keep up as much as we might like with salaries, we went back, we looked at live, work, balance issues that are embedded in our personnel policies, and we came up with a recommendation of 4 parts, 4 steps that we'd like to do to make sure that we keep the pace there. So the first one has to do with what we refer to as vacation buyback. Vacation buyback right now can top out at $450, and there's a little bit of a formula there you can see for how that's calculated. And the idea is you get to the end of the year, and if you've used 0 sick days, you could get a maximum of $450. If you are a part-time employee, I know we had a question about that at the workshop, you're still eligible for this benefit, but it's just a prorated amount based on the amount you work as a part-timer. If you work very little as a part-timer, that's one number. If you work a lot, that's another number, and it's all just percentage-based. So if you're at the maximum right now, you might get $450. Occasionally, we have looked at the budget and we've said, you know what, we've got enough to boost that up to $750, but we've always done that by city manager discretion. I'd like to kind of tighten that policy up and get it to be a regular amount and kind of limit the City manager just kind of puts money into it by city manager discretion. So that's the suggestion for changing to a maximum, a different way of calculating it, but resulting in a maximum of $800. So that was part one. That's referenced in your employee handbook already. Live Work Balance Part 2 just has to do with the maximum carryover. And the issue here that we hear from employees goes like this. They may know that they've got a special event, a wedding, birth of a child, whatever it might be, a special trip they've been planning for a long time, where they might say, gosh, I'd really like to have some of these benefit hours roll more over from 1 year to the next year. And so these aren't major changes, but it is responsive to some employee requests. And what we would do here is to say, right now today, the maximum you can carry past January the 1st in your vacation hours is 168 vacation hours. We'd like to increase that to 30 days or 240 hours. And so that's 9 additional days. Again, not, changing the world here, but making a minor improvement for our staff members who might want to have more leeway in managing their vacation time on a year-to-year basis. Similar on the sick leave side of it. Go back to the part 2 there, sorry. On the sick leave part of it, similar policy. Right now today, you can only carry over 90 days. We'd like to increase that to 100 days or 800 hours, carrying past December the 31st. So again, the idea here is maybe you've got an employee who's got some tenure with us over the years. They've saved up, hadn't been taking a lot of sick time. Let's say they've saved up that 720, and then they end up having maybe a fairly large illness. We see that from time to time. Of course, it's not frequent, but when we see it from time to time, it's a tough situation. All this does is to say, hey, if you want to be cautious and you want to carry over a maximum amount of sick leave time, instead of carrying over 90 days, let's let the employees carry over 100 days of sick leave time. And as you get older in your career, you're more likely to take advantage of that. If you are planning a maternity leave, that may give you a little bit more leeway on that sort of thing. So we think that's a nice couple of small improvements, and that's package 2. So number 3 is adjusting how quickly you earn various increments of vacation time. Right now, you basically have to be around here for about 15 years before you get 3 weeks of vacation. And as we look at it, that's really not what we're hearing from millennials. That's not what we're hearing from a lot of employees about where they'd like to be on a vacation time scale. So right now, what we propose to do is reduce the tenure necessary to earn 12 days of vacations from 6 years to 3 years, reduce the tenure necessary for 15 days of vacation from 15 years down to 5 years. And then the tenure for 20 days of vacation would just stay at 20 years. And then we would add a 25-day demarcation point at 30 years of tenure. So it's not a lot of employees, but that's going to be some of our more senior employees. And we felt like that was an appropriate thing to do for the very highly tenured folks at that 30-year mark. I think the biggest change there is changing when you get your 3rd week of vacation. And moving that from 15 years to 5 years, I think that's going to help us recruit the younger age range, because I think that's part of what they're looking for with flexibility from an employer. Number 4 is the discussion that we've had a few times. The staff recommendation here, just to sort of be clear on the PowerPoint slide, our recommendation is to add the day after Christmas as a holiday day. So right now we've got 11 paid holidays, and you can see the list there. We had discussion about Juneteenth. Our recommendation is wait and see what the state of Texas does. There's talk that the state of Texas will peg it on June the 19th. There's talk that the state of Texas will make it either the Friday or the Monday, related to whichever happens to be closest to the 19th. If we don't know that, we probably don't need to go nailing that down and picking a certain day until the state of Texas does. And then on additional floating holiday, again, we just felt like we don't want to be too aggressive in any given year with requests for new vacation time or holidays or that sort of thing. So we just want to put the additional floating holiday day on hold. And so the only thing we would change under the staff proposal is to simply add the day after Christmas as a holiday day. And I can assure you from my years at City Hall, that's going to be the day that impacts our citizens the least. That's where they are. Again, to answer the question about impact on part-time employees for all of this, for part-time employees, they accrue sick leave just at a slower rate because they're part-time instead of full-time. They accrue vacation time just at a slower rate because they're part-time instead of full-time. So all the same benefit package goes to the part-timers associated with these 4 items I'm showing you. They just earn those vacation and sick leave times a little bit slower because of their part-time status. So we don't have it on for action today, but the next page in the packet shows you a resolution, which would be the form the council would have to pass in order to move forward and make this happen. All of these are amendments to the employee handbook. So we've got a draft of what those would look like. Of course, council can have plenty of opportunity to have input on this. If you move to the next page, you can see there's a whole section there on holidays. This is the long way of saying everything I just said, so I'll let you guys look through that. The next page is the vacation portion of it. Again, this is the long version of saying it, and this is basically all the nuances related to the details about how we keep track of vacation time. And you can see there in the middle of the page the line about the part-time employees and how we take care of them on a prorated basis. The next page kind of rounds out that vacation time. Then the next page in here is all of the details associated with sick leave policy. Most of this verbiage is just exactly the way it is now. We just went into where it said 90 days and changed it to 100 days. That's the major change here outside of the one on the next page I'm going to show you, which is item I. Again, this is a policy that we included the last time you passed a disaster declaration, and that is just an element of consistency here. When you do have a widespread medical leave issues, so think pandemic, but we wanted to word that broadly, arising from city council endorsed or statewide endorsed disaster declarations. So it's the same thing we're doing now. You got to have a disaster declaration for the city manager to receive this authority. But we felt like it was better to also mirror that language in the employee handbook, and it just says the city manager may provide additional periods targeted to health and safety of employees. So we run a program now just for kind of clarity's sake that if you do have a positive test for COVID, you get some additional COVID leave time, and we do that to kind of make sure that we're being sensitive to employees who are dealing with COVID-related issues. So this would just continue our ability to do that, but put it in employee handbook form. So again, just an opportunity for council to see what their vote would look like in terms of the resolution that would actually need to pass. Really didn't want to do anything with it tonight other than give city council an opportunity to ask any questions and let me know what you're thinking on this topic.
Okay. This is in response to our meetings on Thursday and Friday, a response to how we wanted to handle the employee handbook. And does anybody have any questions of Mr. Sims?
Thank you for bringing this to us. I did have the question, so thank you for addressing that with part-timers. I always think part-timers are always excellent or potentially excellent full-timers. So I love that when they're already in positions, they're trained, and they come on full-time. There are several jobs I've probably had that I tested the water. I didn't want to jump in because I wanted to see what the culture, what the environment was like. So I think that's good to always think about them as well. But I think this is very good, increasing some of the benefits that our employees have. I think we're making strides now to let them know how important they are to us and how we really, really appreciate their work for our city and our citizens. Thank you so much. Oh, and on the other, part 4, I just think staff should make that decision. I understand where you're talking about not being overly aggressive because we don't know what the state's gonna do. So that may be something that we can get our Director of Human Resources to just kind of see what she thinks is best, or based on her expertise, or just even getting a feel from some of the staff. But I think this is a great delivery And it's really nice to do things like this, to let our employees know how we feel about them. Thank you.
Thank you. Grady, do you have anything? All right, next item on the agenda is discuss FY '23 budget follow-up items. Again, Mr. Sims.
So council, sometimes everything's not wildly exciting, but in interest of government transparency, we like to show you our tax rate calculation worksheet every time. I am not going to read it to you, but here it is. This is the document that we fill out with the county tax authority, and it goes through the truth in taxation rule book that was passed as part of Senate Bill 2 a couple of years ago. So you start out with some taxable values, and then you take every single bit of data that you can possibly find related to exemptions, homestead exemptions, over 65 exemptions, valuation that's in the tax increment refinance zone, valuation that's outside of the tax refinance zone, valuation that's associated with tax ceilings, valuations that are associated with all sorts of stuff. You put it through the meat grinder, and it's really like doing your taxes. So you come up with adjusted values, you come up with numbers that get little nicknames like no new revenue tax rate. If you go to the last page of this part of this, then you'll see a signature from Teresa Floyd. Hard to read on there, but it's the last three numbers that are sort of the controlling numbers in the whole deal. It's kind of like getting down to the end of your taxes and you finally see, okay, what's the bottom line number here? So there's three bottom line numbers, and this gives City Council your sort of range of authority. So remember, our current total tax rate is 0.7642, okay? That means 76.42 cents per $100 of valuation. And so what is the end of the calculations? These are not what we're doing. This is what Senate Bill 2 and Truth in Taxation Laws allows the city to do. The no new revenue tax rate is at 79.45 cents. The voter approval rate is at 78.79 cents, and the de minimis rate is at a little over 80 cents. And kind of the thing for a voter to take off of all of that is that means that the city council has independent authority to pass property tax rate increases. Let me make sure I say that right. Property tax rate increases up to that 78.79 number, okay, that middle number right there. So what is the proposal in the city budget for FY23, tax year 2022? And it's to leave the tax rate unchanged at the 7642 number. So even though you do all that math, you do all those calculations, the end point answer is that the staff recommendation is don't change anything, leave it at 0.7642. And so that's what the budget's built on this year. And even though we did the worksheet, we're not taking advantage of the flexibility provided in the worksheet, because it's just not in line with our policies this time around. We do have a number of residents who signed up for the over 65 freeze last time around. We're trying to calculate the benefit that has had on homeowners. And again, that's one of those statistics that takes a little bit of time to pry out of the data, but we'll be doing that, and we'll have that report for you shortly about the value. Remember, last year y'all voted to put in place the freeze, and that sets the valuation benefits for folks who might have been hit by an increase in appraised value this particular year. So anyway, that one's all disclosure. The next couple of pages will take you through a couple of the other issues we talked about in terms of follow-up. One conversation was stormwater fee history. We had a lengthy presentation on this from Mr. McKeska and Mr. Rogers related to what we're trying to get done. As you all know, this is a major priority for us, partly because we've got structures that in a major flood event would flood. And we want to make sure that we take care of having enough revenue to make corrections and improvements to our stormwater drainage system. But it's also the simple matter that we really have a lot of old legacy drainage ditches on the side of the road in the city of Terrell, much more than our fair share, much more than a lot of other cities have. But That's maybe 70 or 80 years of decision-making in the past of not building roads in some neighborhoods with drainage underground, and that's just something we deal with in trying to make sure that we can get that fixed up over the course of time. So our recommendation from staff was to increase from $7.65 per household to $8.65 per household in the FY23 budget. So we have some discussion at council workshop about that topic, and I'll go through a couple of slides here to show you where that goes. Here's the revenue associated with that. As we showed you, we have a drainage study identifying that we need to do $60 million of drainage improvements in the city of Terrell. And if we're only bringing in somewhere between $1.4 and $1.6 million a year in revenue, it's going to take an awful long time for us to get to $60 million in improvements. So the next slide shows you, this slide shows you how that revenue comes out. If you want to get into the in-depth side of the calculations, what's happening there is that under state law, there is a definition of something called an ERU, an equivalent residential unit. And the idea is that there's pretty much an average you can calculate with the roof of a single-family home, the driveway of a single-family home, the porch of the single-family home, and say, hey, that's the impervious surface. That's the stuff that can't run into the dirt, right? That's the stuff that isn't grass. And so you define that, and you say, okay, we're going to set a dollar amount that a single-family residence has to pay. And so that's that $765 or $865 that you saw earlier. Then what you're doing with everything else is you're calculating, and the city one here is interesting, the city owns a lot of pavement, right? So Terrell Municipal Airport, think about how many households, how many roofs, how many driveways you could fit on the runway at Terrell Municipal Airport. So under state law, if we charge this fee to anybody, we actually have to go in and calculate exactly how many residential equivalent units there are on their property. And so the city makes a payment, obviously a multifamily complex would make a payment, and then you can see those commercial payments. So imagine Buc-ee's, imagine Walmart, imagine Home Depot. There's a lot of parking lot out there, and they have a lot of stormwater runoff, and so state law says calculate that based on equivalent residential units. So when you think about where does that revenue come from, you got to remember residential pays about a quarter of it, and then the city from other funds, like the airport fund, pays about 12% of it, and then commercial and multifamily are paying a little over 60% combined of that share. So that's the source of the stormwater revenue. As we talked about at the budget workshop, when you go up $1 for a resident, then that means that you're raising about $200,000 in new stormwater revenue, okay? Next slide gives you a little bit more background information on this. We decided to, we had a question about, and we wanted to run the data for you on who are the top 20 stormwater fee customers. So Walmart Distribution, they got a lot of pavement out there at Walmart DC. They got a lot of roof out there at Walmart DC. So when you measure that, what you find out is that if you gave them a $1 increase, right now today, they're paying $2,768 a month. And a $1 increase, they would pay $363 more. And at a $2 increase, they'd pay $725 more. So that's a monthly payment dollar amount you're seeing there. You can look down here and say, okay, there's the Quick Trip. They pay $1,200 a month now. The staff proposed $101 increase in that fee would add $158, and then a $2 increase would change that to a $316 increase. And so this is a nice little summary page that tells you the top 20, and you can see the city of Terrell has more than one thing that we own with more than one water meter that we have, because you're charging this by water meter. The largest one the school district has is paying $1,500 per month on it, and a $1 increase is $203, $2 increase is $406. Any of these increases by state law go directly back into the stormwater fund, and they can only be used for drainage and stormwater improvements throughout the city. The next slide shows you where we are in comparison with other cities. And again, this sort of goes back to, it's really hard to find a comparison city for the city of Terrell on this. I would offer to you that Frisco, Corinth, Trophy Club, some of the other cities on here, Grapevine, the Colony, Little Elm, Allen, those are cities that have built up primarily after adopting very in-depth stormwater requirements that don't have any open ditch drainage whatsoever. So it's kind of hard to compare us against them. On the other hand, if you look at Dallas and Fort Worth, I'd offer to you that there's quite a few neighborhoods in Dallas and Fort Worth that are extremely challenged with having open ditch drainage where they've tried to go back and fix that. There's a large section of the city of Denton that never really got proper stormwater facilities. So you can see those there. You can see Lancaster there. Lancaster's not the worst comp for the city of Terrell on something like this. And you can see where we stand right now, where we're at our current dollar amount. And then if we increased, you can see we would go a little bit. We'd probably be right up close. We'd probably pass Colleyville, and we'd get right up next to Lancaster with an improvement in the range that we've been talking about here over the last couple of weeks. So that's a good comparison. I just wanted to provide that for council review on stormwater. Again, we're not voting on stormwater tonight. It's just an item for y'all to contemplate where you might want to go, and this is follow-up from questions that were asked at the budget workshop last week. The next slide turns our attention from stormwater to the residential bill. Y'all saw a draft version of this at the city council meeting, again at the budget workshop, and we wanted to polish this up for you and kind of walk you through this. I've got two examples this time around as opposed to just one example. So a single person in a single family home, they're going to use something on the order of 2,400 gallons per month. And all of the math I'm going to show you excludes the water or wastewater franchise fee, which is, again, a state law issue that we deal with. So I'll start with trash. Current charge for trash on a person's water bill is $12.52. Staff said, hey, we really need to make sure we're keeping up with increases that we're seeing in inflation. We'd like to increase that to $13.02. And as I mentioned, we're under a contract with our provider at this time, which we hope will allow us to keep the commercial aspect of this, the payment to the commercial side, static during this budget year. The base increase then is what staff suggested of 50 cents. And then an option that might get thrown out there is to increase from 50 cents. And instead of doing a 50-cent increase, do a $1 increase, okay? And so that would add us about $28,000 in additional general fund revenue. And we would say, hey, let's just transfer that over to fleet because that would give us a little bit of extra money to take care of any unexpected increases in fuel costs. We don't plan on spending that money. We just want to say, let's go hold that in the fleet fund for fuel cost increases because we certainly see a lot of fluctuation in fuel costs these days. On the water side of it, this is this complicated issue of North Texas Municipal Water District, where we obtain our water from. They are raising their rates by 13% this year. And so we really struggle with how do we make sure that we don't hit our retail water customers too much when we're taking a 13% increase in water costs from North Texas Municipal Water District. So right now, the current charge for somebody consuming this much water is about $39.54. Our original suggestion was to go up 7%. I think the better wisdom and caution there is to actually go up 8% because we know that next year they're planning another 11% increase at North Texas Municipal Water District. So that would mean that instead of a $2.77 increase, we'd have a $3.16 increase. Wastewater, we're really saying, hey, let's just leave that alone. That's equivalent to a 3% increase in our wastewater charges. Stormwater, this is the conversation I just showed you all the detail on. Stormwater, currently $7.65. The proposal from staff was to go up $8.65. But remember, what we stated was if you take the kind of staff thinking, we would propose to go up, staff would propose to go up to $9.65 in FY24. So a option for council consideration is to move part or all of the planned FY24 increase into FY23. If you move all of that increase, you move all that additional dollar forward by 12 months, that's going to add $200,000 in additional stormwater revenue. So that's good revenue, that's healthy revenue, but just want to be clear about how that would actually work. Staff proposal was go from 765 to 865 in FY '23, and then come back around in FY '24 and move that number to $9.65. So you guys need to kind of mull that over. The ambulance fee right now is $1, no change to that. And then you can see all those summary numbers for you right down there. And this brings you back to, I think, what the mayor was discussing, which is, hey, think through the idea of, do we want to be out talking about a $5.55 increase, or would moving that needle up to a $7.44 increase, how would that go, and would that be a reasonable amount given all the pressures we're under right now from an economic standpoint? Next one is the exact same conversation, and I won't read this one to you, but we also wanted to provide the analysis for you in terms of family of four, so you can see the trash, the wastewater, the stormwater and the ambulance numbers are the same, but the water and wastewater are just slightly higher, because this example, they're consuming 8,000 gallons of water per month, and so consequently, the water and wastewater numbers are higher in this example. But again, that's, food for thought. Wanted to get those numbers out for you. This time around, instead of having a $9.23 increase, there'd be an $11.57 increase if you move to those higher numbers. So that's all food for thought. Again, no voting right now, but during the month of September, we'll have to vote on rates, and you needed some time to consider all of that. Dawn, can I just see what we got next there? I think that, oh, I'm sorry. The last one here is the commercial industrial side. So these guys have trash pickup also. Right now, there's a base payment that's made to Waste Connections to go pick that trash up. So Olive Garden, as an example, is paying $1,203.12 for trash pickup every month. And right now, they pay a fee to cover the city side of those obligations of $204. So the hauler, the private company, is getting $1,203, and the city is getting $204 off of that. So that's their current payment of $1,407. The staff proposal, again, we're kind of phasing in an increase over time. Our proposal was to get that to 21%, and that would bring them up to $252, and then you can see the new proposed payment. So we built the budget with the additional revenue associated with going from a 17% franchise fee to a 21% franchise fee, and that gets you that $1455 payment. The next slide shows you a different option. Again, similar to stormwater, we would have said that we were planning to move to a rate of 25% in FY '24, and I could say that one of your options as council is to go ahead and move that planned FY '24 rate increase of going all the way to 25%. You could certainly move that forward from FY '24 into FY '23 as well, and then you can see the resulting charges and numbers associated with that. I gave you more commercial and service data. Next slide is just showing Oldcastle, Nucor, Walmart, DC as examples. And so you can actually compare these guys on this slide with where they are on stormwater and see what those numbers look like. And here is the rate at 21%, and then the next slide is the rate when you move it up to 25%. The differential in terms of overall city revenue into the general fund between a 21% rate and a 25% rate is about an additional $100,000. So that's what you're looking at in terms of revenue into the general fund. My concern in the general fund in FY '23 was A, making sure we took care of labor expenses, but B, I really didn't quite feel like we were carrying enough over into reserve over the course of FY '23. So if council is amenable, you can kind of consider your thoughts on that as we get ready to vote on this. Again, these are September votes that we're talking about now, and this is just data that helps you out with that. So those were budget follow-up items that we felt like were important to get back to you to answer questions from the workshop on Thursday and Friday. I'd be happy to answer any questions about those.
All right, thank you, Mike. Again, council, we had budget retreat Thursday and Friday. We discussed in depth about all of these different options. And one of the concerns and one of the discussions that we had is what impact is this gonna have on our citizens, right? Not just the single family, not just the single individual living in a house, but a family of four. Staff and Mike and his staff got us these numbers for us to consider. But I also want to remind you that we talked about the city being a business and that we have to cover our costs. Part of that is inflationary, something that we can't control. The other part of it is we can't operate in the negative as a city, or we're gonna find ourselves in big trouble. So we talked about what would be a good buy for our citizens, knowing that everything is going up, and we feel comfortable with telling them, is it $5.55? Is it $10? Is it somewhere in between? And I think the council has, the staff has come back at a $7.80, what was that? Can you go back to that slide, please? Yeah, $7.44 number.
Yes, sir.
But then we've also have looked at it up to $11, is that correct?
Yeah, if you look at remember, the
11.50.
only difference between the first slide, right here,
Uh-huh.
the difference here is I've got one person in a house using
Right.
2,400 gallons. The next slide is
Family.
of four
Right.
using 8,000 gallons. Now, the average citywide is 5,000 gallons, right? If you want to know what the average user is, the average user is about halfway between these two examples,
Okay.
okay? But just in terms of, well, what does this mean for, quote, average, not that anybody's really the average family, but if you were an average family of four, then these would be your numbers. And if you go back one slide and you think, well, what about a single individual who's just renting a house and they're there alone? Well, okay, the numbers are consequently a little bit lower there.
Okay, so again, we have a range of $7.44 for individual, $11 and some change for a family of four. And that's to keep the service at the level that we have. Two trash pickups weekly. They pick up debris and they pick up limbs when we need them to. And that also allows us to put some money in the fund so that if we have to send someone out, then we have that covered a little bit. Again, I wish we didn't have this inflationary stuff going on, but we do. I wish the costs weren't going up, but they are. And so the tough decision for all of us is, while we would all like to say, hey, we're not raising anything, we have to raise something. We're not gonna raise the taxes, and then we've got the seniors who are frozen in at their rate. We've tried to be as best stewards of what we're trying to get done and operate at a level that's comfortable for our city and our staff. We can't ask them to do things and then not fund it. That just doesn't work. That model will not work for us. So with that said, anybody have any comments, or do you want time to review what was delivered tonight? I think it was timely. We asked for the information. They got it to us by Tuesday. That's good work, Mike. Thank you for that. On all of the requests that the council have made, they've responded quickly. So we can study it, make our decisions, and move forward with it. Great.
Good work.
Yeah.
Good work. I
Ready?
like it.
Or
Informed decision is the best decision and the easiest decision to make. That's good. I like the product here, and I can look at everything very good, very well. Thank you so much for your work.
thank you, Steph.
Yeah, city staff.
Ready?
Looks great, we have to increase the tax rate to get
Michael?
all this done. Cost has to go somewhere, unfortunately, but overall, I think this is a great plan.
You have your mic on? Okay, all right, just making sure, because sometimes we have difficulty hearing. Any other questions or comments for item number 8.5? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 9.1. Again, our Assistant City Attorney, Greg Shumpert, will you
Yes.
read that in?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we bring to you tonight ordinance number 2915, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, amending Appendix 2 zoning ordinance of the City of Terrell, Section 9 Zoning Board of Adjustment, ZBA, Section 6 Variances and Special Exceptions, Paragraph C Findings of Undue Hardship, providing for severability and providing an effective date. Mr. Mayor, this was briefed to the council at our last meeting. Basically, we had discovered that our current city ordinances are at odds with changes in state law as regards the findings of undue hardship. This ordinance updates our ordinance to be in compliance and to track the state law in this regard.
So this is a first reading. Will we have a second reading, or do we just need one?
Well, we'll need a second reading on it.
All right, so, council, I remember this, we talked about it, everybody was supportive of it, we said bring it back in, the form of ordinance. So does anybody have any new questions for Mr. Shumpert? Hearing none, is there a motion on 9.1?
May I make a motion that we move on item 9.1, ordinance 29?
Have a motion to approve ordinance number 2915. Is there a second?
A second.
Have a second from Stephanie Holmes Thomas, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem, District 4. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with unanimous consent of the council present. Our next item on the agenda is 9.2. Again, Assistant City Attorney Greg Shumpert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we bring to you tonight resolution number 2024, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute a development agreement between the City of Terrell and Terrell Creekside Development, LP, for the purpose of upsizing a water line to serve the Creekside development and adjacent areas. Basically, what we have here, Mr. Mayor, is a situation where we had a water line that was improperly placed back in 2004, I believe it was, and it's just now come to our attention with regard to expansions at the Southgate Creekside development. And we're being asked to basically go along with the route that the contractors for the Creekside development are using. They've wanted to put in an 8-inch water line. We have asked that it be upsized to a 16-inch water line, which would then be able to serve the adjacent areas as well as Creekside and allow us to not be at odds with the building homes in that subdivision.
Right, and this was a win-win for both parties. I think we discussed this last Tuesday.
We did.
Does anybody have any new questions for Mr. Shumpert? Hearing none, is there a motion